Well, this morning we're really privileged to have Sophie Devonshire, CEO of the Marketing Society, on the show. Very welcome, Sophie. And I'm just going to say a little bit about you, flatter you a little bit. So let's just remember the Marketing Society is a global marketing community. It's been going since 1959 with over 2,500 members, big influence around the globe. And so Sophie heads up all of that. And I have to say, the Marketing Society has been a brilliant partner of the School of Marketing in supporting our mentoring Gen Z program, which we talk about from time to time, but that's really starting to have a bigger impact along that for that struggling community right now. Sophie herself has got a fascinating journey in and around the world of marketing, not least as an entrepreneur and CEO. So from the beginning, Sophie started her career in P&G and Coke, and then had a spell agency side at Burnett in Dubai. But she's also been a successful entrepreneur with Babes and Babies. She's sold a business. She's become CEO of part of the business that bought it. She's worked in strategic consultancy. She's been CEO again in the Caffeine partnership. And then now CEO of the Marketing Society just under a year ago, obviously again, entering in the middle of a pandemic. In between times, Sophie is a published author, and her book, Super Fast, Lead at Speed, has been #1 in the Amazon Business Booksellers chart. And I think the main thing to say about Sophie actually is that she does have a belief, and you'll hear more about this, of the role that positive role that marketing can play in the world, society and people's lives, and loves helping organizations go faster. But probably the clincher is Sophie's a very genuine and lovely person who cares a lot. So I think you're really going to enjoy hearing Sophie's views. So very welcome, Sophie. Great to have you on the show. And I'll pass to Ritchie to get us started.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Sophie, welcome. It's such an absolute pleasure to connect and to have you on the show this morning. Sophie, let's kick off. So you've been in the hot seat at the Marketing Society now, probably coming up to a year. I think that's probably about right. And you were one of those lockdown CEOs, I guess, in coming straight into the role. And I'd love to get your insights and thoughts about how that's been so far.
Well, good morning, Ritchie, and morning, Mark. It's brilliant to be here. Morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Yes, lockdown CEO. Well, starting a new role in the middle of one of the world's craziest experiences. It has been interesting. Yeah, it's been a pretty rubbish year for so many people, hasn't it? I mean, let's be honest. So many businesses really impacted. So many people had a terrible time. But honestly, this last year, it's been pretty exciting because becoming part of the Marketing Society has been so rewarding. We've got a great team. We've got amazing members. We've got so many people interested in what we're doing. So although I am not a fan of being stuck in my spoffice, my spare room and office combined all the time, and not being able to have the thrill and excitement of being out and about, it's actually been quite good. And we're global at the Marketing Society. So one of the small benefits has been, I feel like I've got to know all our global boards and our global members, as well as the people in London, because of the craziness of and the impact of Zoom. So some positives.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, there's silver linings are there to see. But you're right. It has been very tough in very different ways for different people. So what do you think you've learned about yourself during these subsequent lockdowns?
It's difficult to summarize that I mean, we could be here all day talking about it. I think the main thing is, like any tough experience, it is always a learning experience. So, I've learned an awful lot about how much I still like building relationships with people, even when I can't see them in real life. I've learned that you can build great relationships with people, even if you have no idea what kind of footwear they generally wear or what's going on. And I've learned that actually, having spent quite a number of years really interested in the concept of energy as a leader and how important it is to manage your own energy and manage other people's energy, that actually it is more important than ever right now, and trying to be as creative as possible about making sure that everybody around you can still manage their energy during a time when actually things are quite narrow has been an interesting experience in itself.
I love that thought, Sophie. I really do. The thought around energy and I guess invoking positive energy and keeping people going at this challenging moment. And Can you share some of your secret sauce about how you do that? How do you motivate your teams? How do you motivate your ecosystem? Because that's a big part of the marketing society. What are some of the things that you do?
Well, I mean, let's start with why I think it matters, maybe, because when I was researching my book, I spoke to a number of different leaders across the world who were dealing with quite a lot of pressure in different ways. So learning from other people's stories. And the concept of energy, I think, is one that just is so primal. That idea that, I mean, without energy, nothing starts, right? Fires don't burn, engines don't move. People can't be creative, and people can't enjoy their work. So managing energy in that way is something so primal. And trying to find all kinds of different ways and test, like with anything else, testing and learning what works. There's the physical energy side of it all for everybody. So I'm sure everybody's been trying out different ways of getting off Zoom and doing the walks and talks on the phone instead, and breaking it up so that physically you're feeling a bit different. Managing how you eat and sleep, all the really boring stuff that makes a difference to energy. But then there's finding things that give people a little spark and some inspiration. And when you see that and the impact it has on people and the energy that brings, it's brilliant. I don't know if you saw, it's been quite a lot of coverage of Adam Grant's article in the New York Times recently about languishing, which is a description of what a lot of people have been going through during lockdown. It's the kind of meh feeling. You're not really suffering. You're not struggling as much as some people really have in the last year, but everything's just a bit blah and you're languishing. And his answer to that is very much about getting into flow. So finding something to focus on and making a difference. And it gets you into the whole purpose question and giving people something that energizes them because they can see that what they're doing makes a difference, that they can see that there's progress happening. So there's sort of physical, practical things around energy that are really important, but also the more psychological, spiritual, whatever you want to talk about, other ways in which you can give people the inspiration and the excitement they need to actually thrive at work, not just survive.
Wow.
Sophie, it's a very, very holistic approach. My sense is that that's what makes it sustainable and why you've been able to do what you do throughout such a rich and varied career. But I want to go back to the beginning and just ask, how the hell did you get into marketing? What was the trigger point or the entry point?
I totally stumbled into marketing. So when I was at university, Procter Gamble had a very clever scheme to focus in on people who are involved in societies at university, with the logic that, if they were doing things above and beyond, they'd be probably what they wanted for their brand management scheme. But they didn't deduplicate their database. So because I was involved in lots of things, I got lots of letters from this packaged goods company, and I was a bit like, they seem keen, might as well go along for interview practice. So I went along thinking, this is just something interesting to do, and was completely blown away by the conversations I had with the people who interviewed me, which I guess shows again how important people are for your organization brand and the impact of things like interviews. So the people who interviewed me, one of whom I'm still very much in touch with, who's now the CEO at Gillette in P&G, so has stayed in P&G. The way they talked about how much they loved their job, the way they explained how interesting it was, how much you learn in the scheme, the brand management scheme, just felt really appealing. So I decided to give it a go, see what would happen, and completely fell in love with marketing, with business, with the sense of building teams. I absolutely loved my time at P&G and knew that there was something about that, the classic art and science, the rigor you need to understand what's going on. So it was a revelatory experience. So I stumbled into it and then fell in love.
I'll hand to Ritchie in a sec, but maybe they did dedupe their database and and they just like pummeled you. Opportunities to see,
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, very good point.
So they knew about multi-touch point even back then. So there we go. But so Sophie, today, look, you're clearly running a global business and probably one of the most prominent in our world, in our marketing world. But you yourself have had a global career and you've clearly worked in other parts of the world. So I'd love to get your thoughts and insights about the impact that that's had on your career. Whether you think that's been pivotal as being able to gain momentum and a reputation, being able to have worked in different paths, and then reflecting on how that's helped today.
Well, I think it wasn't a deliberate policy. Like so much that happens to us all in life, there are lots of different things that end up making people's careers go in different directions. The Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis talk about the squiggly career, and that's definitely one for me. So it wasn't a deliberate choice for me to go overseas, but as it happened, when I started my first job and I fell totally in love with business and marketing, I also fell totally in love with the person who is now my husband. And there was kind of an A/B testing thing going on because he didn't love what we were doing as much. We started in the same career and ended up taking a role which meant he needed to go overseas. And we therefore lived in Dubai for 3 years and in Estonia for 3 years. And it was amazing. There's nothing like being totally immersed in a completely different culture for making your brain fizz and meeting really different people in it, and definitely enhancing your cultural understanding. I mean, in Estonia, they don't cross fingers, they hold thumbs, and nobody smiles in your neighborhood. And when you try and understand why, you go into the history of what's happened. But also in Estonia, they are incredibly digitally enabled, birthplace of Skype and TransferWise, such an amazing culture, a brilliant place to be if you're interested in digital e-commerce and whatever. So the learning opportunity for being in a different place. And I loved being in the Middle East, and our Middle East hub, which we've just announced is expanding from just Dubai to covering Abu Dhabi as well. It's one of my favorite groups of people out there as well, because the Middle East it's so different. So I guess, I could talk for hours about the opportunities that being able to go overseas gives you, but there are challenges, of course, as well. It's not always convenient, but I think there is something about really understanding how different people are, and getting to know people from very different cultures, which is pretty life enhancing. The book clubs I was part of in both those places, you'd have conversations about a book and there'd be somebody from the US talking about a book that was about communism from a totally different perspective from me and whatever. So yeah, it was an amazing opportunity.
Love it.
It's very evident, you're a curious person, and seeing the bits of the world will fuel that curiosity. All as that has led you to be a 3-time CEO. So the obvious question, and many people listening in, we're thinking, could I be a CEO? Do I want to be a CEO? What's it all like? Is it all it's cracked up to be, being a CEO?
So I think it's difficult to answer that, because I don't think, certainly at the moment, I don't spend much time thinking about the title. I think about the role and therefore the responsibility you have in that role. I have a responsibility to my brilliant team. I have responsibility to all our members, because this is a really important time for marketers, and a responsibility to the brand that you inherit. So the Marketing Society brand, where it's going in the future. So I think there's a lot of a sense of a responsibility with something like that. I think the great thing is that you can represent something. So I've always wanted to support leaders who are interested in business being a positive force for good, and who frankly are people who treat other people with respect. So I guess the main benefit of being in a role where you're allowed to practice what you believe in, and test that out, I guess that's the positive around it all, perhaps. Does that make sense?
It does make complete sense.
For sure. Sophie, I want to pick up on that phrase that you just used, positive force for good. And us as through and through pure marketers would certainly claim that our industry is all about that, being able to change behaviors, make positive differences to people's lives all around the world. Clearly, that's not a view that's always shared, particularly in realms such as advertising, for example. So I'd love to get your thought on what you think, is the future of marketing, maybe some of the, how do we enhance that positivity through and through, and actually get more people to see it that way, as opposed to the opposite?
I think it is frustrating that a lot of people don't see marketing as positive as I certainly do, and I know our members do. I think that it's important to remember that it's from a serious business point of view, marketing is the growth driver, the demand driver. It has a role to play that's fundamentally commercial. So it's important never to forget that. So when I talk about business being a force for good, that is also, marketing being a force for good, that is also marketing being a force for good in terms of economic driving power. So particularly at the moment, when lots of businesses are working out how to rebuild or recover or reshape what they're doing, the role of marketing to make that happen and for it to be commercially successful and economic, just feel it's important to mention that base side of it all. But also marketers have the power to reinvent reality, to reshape reality, to influence, to change what's happening. I mean, we talk about it at the Marketing Society this year as the year of change makers. We've always been people who've created change. Now let's make some choices about what those changes are. And it's a little bit of a broad brush thing, because if you say, all marketing is X, then of course that's too simplistic. Every single different marketing role in every single different organization is complex. But I guess I'd say that in general, the marketers that I work with, the people who are members, they're smart people, and they're people who are interested in the impact of what they do. But there is an element of uncertainty always, and working out how you shape things in the right way to create the biggest impact and the biggest difference. That's where I think the conversations need to happen. So bringing people together with the society, as an industry, with us having all these kind of conversations to work out, are the ways of making sure that what we're doing is responsive to what the business needs, and is making a difference when it comes to the economy or what you want to do in your business. And it's also responsible, that there is a long-term impact, and that we use the power we absolutely have in a way that can be sustainably positive for the long term.
Yeah, I've got this thing in my head about Spider-Man: with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. You said bright people in marketing. Well, hey, Ritchie and I and everyone listening isn't going to disagree with that. But from what you've seen, what makes a great marketer in terms of attitudes and behaviours?
I think it's pretty simple, because it does start with what you talked about earlier, Mark, the people who live a life of curiosity. It's such an overwhelming job, and you cannot do it unless you have that great peripheral vision. You're looking up and looking out and seeing what's happening, because I would say that's the same principle for great entrepreneurs and founders as well. That ability to find an idea, to search and reapply and see what happens, to constantly be learning. And it's such, any business role is, and leadership is an iterative process, but for marketing it definitely is. You need to constantly be ahead of it all. But I think there's also I kind of think it's one of the hardest jobs out there, because you do have to keep constantly upgrading your brain software, and there is that mix at the moment of needing to be both fantastic in understanding where technology can be an accelerator or can help you, but also that innate human understanding. So knowing your customer, of course, we have to be the ones that represent the customer in the boardroom. It makes me sad that Amazon have to have an empty chair when they should just have the marketeer being there representing the customer. So the human understanding of understanding the customer. I also think understanding those you work with is critical for being fantastic at marketing and certainly getting somewhere. So we've just started running the Marketing Leadership Masterclass with Sil Saller, our president, and Thomas Barter, one of our great fellows. And it's all about influence. It's all about understanding how you can get people on board, because great marketers have to sort of join up the different parts of the organization more than anybody else has. They have to bring people together inside the organization as well as externally. I think it's not a job for the faint-hearted, definitely.
Certainly isn't, and clearly the risk-taking nature of the uncertainty, perhaps rather than risk, that we probably endure as marketers is certainly forefront of my mind every day. as we deliver a range of programs as well at the School of Marketing. But I want to turn the conversation a little bit, Sophie, to your book. And actually, I'm really curious about the title. So super fast, lead at speed. Where did that come from? What was the inspiration behind that?
It's a provocation. And it came about because I was spending a lot of time with different leaders in different organizations who were saying a couple of things to me at the time. They were saying, this is an amazing time to be in business because the way technology works, you can make things happen so fast. And isn't this really exciting? I want to do something. And at the same time, they were all going either, oh, but my organization is so slow. It's not going anywhere. It's so bureaucratic. Or they were saying, but I'm under enormous pressure because everything's moving so fast. I don't know how to get the pace right. So I could see that there was a need and something there. And I wanted to research it and find out, well, how do you, in a leadership role, get the pace right? What's the secret? So wanted to discover it. And actually, of course, it's a provocation because at the heart of the book, it's about understanding that this is a super fast world and that great leaders need to work out how to set the right pace within that. It's not just you must lead at speed, because of course, as we've seen in the last year, pace is important and moving at pace is critical, but also being a pace setter and understanding the variety of pace is what makes all the difference.
So just to do a slightly contrarian thing, by the time CEOs get to make decisions, all the easy ones have been made, all the black and white. It's the really messy, tangled, knotty ones. So how do you balance maintenance of pace versus that sometimes you've got to give yourself the space, time, the latitude to really think deeply about the knottier problems? How do you balance the two? And
I think that's the $1 million question. And when you see great leaders who understand the power of high velocity decision making, it makes all the difference. So when I was researching the book, I spoke to a few physicists and engineers about speed and trying to understand it a little bit more. And one of them said to me, don't talk about speed, Sophie, talk about velocity, much sexier word. And actually it's really important because velocity means speed in a given direction. So the way to balance decision making and get the pace right is to start off with knowing what direction you're going in, to have that clarity, to have the frameworks in place. That then means that decisions you make can be done at high velocity. But it's an absolute, I mean, we've certainly seen it in every part of everybody's business in the last year. Too slow is stupid. But you're right, Mark, because too fast is also foolhardy. So working out how to build in time to think, to make sure you've got opportunities for the power of the pause when you bring people together to properly spend time working out, is this the right decision? It's a real skill, and it makes all the difference to not panicking about the fact that things are moving fast and that we want things to move fast.
I love that thought process there, Sophie. I'm going to take a question from the crowd. So Matt from TSB, he asks, what one piece of advice you wish you were told earlier in your career?
Hi, Matt. Good morning. Well, relatively late in my career, I was given a really good piece of advice, which I think is one I could have done with earlier. So a lovely friend said to me when I was suffering from a massive amount of overwhelmitis. So you know that bit where you sort of say yes to everything, there's a lot going on, you feel like you are failing at being a mother, failing at being a friend, failing at everything. And I was grumbling to a good friend about this and the frustration of ambition versus not being enough hours in the day. And he said to me, darling, and he was being very nice about it, he said, darling, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And it is a very useful piece of advice, understanding how to edit what you're doing and make some choices, and working out how to say no sometimes with grace, and realizing that it is impossible to have it all, impossible to do it all. It was just quite handy. I hope that helps.
Cool.
And you practice what you preach, because I know you've said that I think this is one of the first interviews you've done that has been you talking working on you doing something on behalf of the Marketing Society. So you made us wait a little bit, but I think that you evidence that you are very focused. Which leads me on to my next question, so Babes with Babies, you grew a business for 7 years. Often it's described as selling your business as being like selling your baby. So you see what I did there a little bit. But I mean, what was that like to let go? Was it a relief? Was it painful? We haven't had many people on who have talked about exiting. So I'd just love to hear your experience of that.
It was incredibly hard. Not so much the exiting, but just knowing that that it's something that isn't around anymore. And it is impossible to describe what it feels like to be a startup founder unless you do it. And I think I went into it, completely underestimating what an impact it has on your life emotionally, and how it takes over everything. It's incredibly brilliant from a learning point of view. Moving from working with massive organizations with huge budgets to building something from scratch with no money at all. God, you learn fast, and you learn how to do things differently, and it was a fantastic experience, and we did some brilliant things. But it's also painful because you are so caught up in what you're doing, and I think there's a tenacity for startup founders and a determination which you don't always see in everybody, and I don't know if ultimately that's always something for me. I've since worked with lots of other amazing founders who I know it is their life's mission to carry on that business, and you sometimes need that. So it is all learning. Everything we go through, every time something's challenging or tough, you have that awareness that's building your resilience and your skills. But moving on from things is hard. So it was a very formative experience, and lots of things I'm proud of, and I wouldn't change it. But sometimes you wish you had a magic wand to make things slightly different.
Sophie, I think you're really speaking to my heart as a startup founder a number of times over now. It's that tenacity to keep going and feeling like it's your life's work, which really, kind of gets you through those moments. But interestingly as well, I'm loving some of the terms you're coining or terms you're referring to. I mean, languishing, by the way, for me, it just hit home. I'm like, maybe that's just me right now. It's so interesting how that really resonated. The A/B testing, another great one, and overwhelmitis, flipping heck, I think that's certainly one I've not heard of too. So there you go, lots of cool things. But as part of the Marketing Society, you guys, one of your key missions is to help develop your members. But ultimately, I would like to really understand how you take charge of your own personal development. And what are the things that you do to keep yourself fresh to then be able to help others?
So I think this is something I think is really important, and we go back to the overwhelmitis, the other pandemic that hits everybody. There are only a certain number of hours in the day, but I do try and make sure that across the week, a number of those hours are based around learning and development. Because when we go back to the earlier point, to sustain energy, is very important, because that actually you can help others more if you can keep developing yourself. So it's not a selfish thing. So you've got Warren Buffett and everybody who talks about the 5 hours a week of learning, and I think there is a considered practice there. If you are the sort of person that wants to keep improving, I think we're all on that journey. So I try and make sure that I'm consciously finding ways to learn. I mean, I'm a big reader. It's much, much harder in lockdown because I miss my, reading on the tube and things like that. Shows like this are, of course, brilliant for personal development as well. But in all seriousness, there is that one of the things I found out from researching Superfast. I spoke to 100 different leaders, right? Really successful. But the only thing that successful people all have in common fundamentally is that they are successful. They were so different personalities, introverts, extroverts, managing different businesses or whatever. But they all were people who were interested enough in development and learning to actually give their time to share their stories with me. And the thing you discover by doing something like that, you know, and I've done a lot of workshops with organisations sharing some of the insights around Superfast. And it's that idea that you share stories from other people to help you go faster. So anyone who likes to go faster loves a shortcut, and learning from the stories of others. So I guess listening to people is a great way to personally develop. And you may reject it. You know, it's not that success is, you know, a recipe. People, you know, you may completely reject what someone's saying, and it may be different for you, but it stimulates your thinking and it speeds up what happens. Yeah, and I also, one of the other things that someone suggested years ago, which I've kind of unofficially done, is the idea of a personal boardroom, or, you know, a group of friends and contacts who are just really interesting people whose brains you can pick from time to time, who can be your, you know, expert in certain areas. You know, I have a brilliant friend who's so much more technologically advanced than me. And, you know, when we sit and have a drink and I go, so what's the latest app on your phone? What are you doing here? You know, to stimulate thinking. Just that idea of developing by learning from others, maybe. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, we must learn from other people's mistakes. Life is too short to make them all ourselves. So time and people.
I'm going to just ask one very quick follow-up question. Do you think you learn more or get more out of reading or writing?
Oh, great question. I mean, that was one of the reasons I wrote the book. I think that writing, so I can't remember, is it Hemingway, whoever talks about think in ink. So whenever, I would say writing for me, whenever there's a business problem or something I need to work out, writing a document that says, right, where are we, what's happening, helps crystallize your process. But reading is a wonderful thing, you know, to lose yourself in other people's fantastic writing, to hear the stories, to be inspired by it all. So
on the fence.
Yeah, well, that's just on Sophie, I know that for your board meetings, you do write a document, have a pause point for everybody to read them properly. And so you do both there simultaneously. So it's probably an and rather than an or, at least in your board meetings. There's a couple of comments here. So we've got somebody saying this. So Phil, this is part of my ongoing learning. Matt saying same here, Phil. So Ritchie, high five. I think we're now actually on people's personal development plans. Now the next thing is, Ritchie and my job's very, very easy because we get brilliant questions like this. So a question from Craig, who works obviously very closely with Sophie at the Marketing Society. So Sophie, if you're looking back 10 years from now and you think, wow, what an amazing, successful time I've had in this last decade, what will have happened? You can thank Craig for that.
Thanks, Craig. It's a great question, because we have got to, it's so easy to get caught up in the short term and trying to sort of hit your personal goals. 10 years from now, I'm just doing the maths and thinking about how old I'll be and what will happen 10 years from now. We will have created even more support for what marketing can do in the Marketing Society, and that has to be one of the big ambitious goals. We want to, so I'm going to start with the work side of it all, because of course there are personal things as well, but we want to inspire, accelerate and unite the world's smartest marketers and help them do well in their careers, and also help them do good in businesses, the economy and society. And we can only do that by bringing together the best people to help each other and to build a society, you know, the clue's in the name, a society of people who help each other. So 10 years from now, we could have had such an incredible impact together. And everybody who joins something like the society or gets involved in a community like that understands that we can achieve so much more when we aren't alone, when we come together, when we have the conversations, when we help each other. So I think there is a huge amount we can do in the next 10 years. I think that personally as well, you know, it's really important for everybody to make sure that, you know, they live a well-rounded life. And I want to make sure across the next 10 years that I'm having an impact and helping others above and beyond the day job, thinking through where the opportunities are. And you just have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, that's the lesson of the last 10 years, actually, when you look at how much the world has changed. It's impossible to plan for a linear approach. who knows what's going to happen in the world, in our businesses, in our lives. But I want to know that across the next 10 years, when I look back, that, I don't know, there's been some enjoyment around it. I'm just thinking, what's the Maya Angelou quote about? My mission in life is to thrive, not just to survive, but to thrive, to do it with some passion, some humour, some compassion and some style, something like that. So maybe 10 years of helping build something that we feel really, really proud of and that has a positive impact on a lot of people, and trying to enjoy it and have some fun along the way.
Amazing.
Lovely.
So I can certainly say that you're well on your way to that at the Marketing Society. I can already see that impact that's taken shape. So it's really cool to sort of be a bystander at the side, watching, looking in. So if you're getting some amazing comments too. So Lindsay talks about the personal board is a great idea that she's adopted over the past few months. Hi, Lindsay. Nice to see you on. Mark Conley says, I love the notion that the only thing that all successful people have in common is that they're successful. Very cool takeaway. So yes, some good comments that are resonating there. Sophie, I just want to talk a little bit about, I know we're slightly running out of time, but I want to come to a little bit around the bumps in the road, because I think people learn from as much as though the bumps as they do from the successes, if not more. So perhaps reflecting on some of the things that haven't gone as well as you planned or hoped, and some reflections on what you learned from them.
I think there's there's something about things not being linear and things needing to go in different directions. So because I've needed to sort of take a slightly different path because of going overseas, coming back, because of the experience of frankly being a startup founder and everything that goes along the way, there are always times when the demons of self-doubt hit everybody, and the pressure that it's very easy to put on yourself to be perfect, wanting to make it all happen. I think the things that have been challenging along there are, frustrations with myself when things aren't as perfect as I want them to be. But I do think I've been so lucky to have people along the way who have pointed out that everybody feels the same way, that underneath it all, nobody is filled with an innate confidence that they are perfect. Actually, there are a couple of people I've met who've got an amazing self-belief and self-confidence, and that's great. But of course, I think you're more empathetic if you understand that people aren't perfect. And the imposter syndrome side of it all, again, it's that learning from other people's stories helps. So there's a great story about Neil Gaiman, who's the writer, meeting a guy at a party who was saying, gosh, there's all these amazing people here. What am I doing here? And feeling self-conscious about it. It turns out this man was another Neil. It was Neil Armstrong. He was this amazing dude, and he was feeling self-conscious that he hadn't achieved enough, and he's, first man on the moon or whatever, he'd achieved quite a lot. And that, reminded Neil Gaiman how we all have those demons. So failures, screw ups, turning them into a story in your head helps. Knowing that everything you've done gives you strength and resilience and things to learn from, and accepting that it's part of an overall journey and that all of us take opportunities and can build on it. I think that's helped, but it's really tricky, because it's very easy to look at other people and think that everybody's got it all sorted and they're super confident. Staying in your own lane, working out what your own path is, and is this right for you? Where I feel I've really failed is where I do things which are inconsistent with what my values are, or where I think I've been a complete so-and-so to someone else, etc., etc. It is frustrating sometimes to not get what you always want. But if there is another way through, and there's a way of finding the opportunities and the learning experience from it, everything is learning.
Yeah. Sophie, it's great that you talk about imposter syndrome openly. I once heard that everybody has imposter syndrome, except for sociopaths and narcissists. They're off the hook. But for everyone else, it's just part of life's burden. So we could have talked for twice as long as this, but it's time for final question. And so I just wanted to ask if there's one thing you'd like everybody to remember or pause on at these difficult times as we're still in the middle of a pandemic, what would that be?
I think probably there's a general philosophy to be reminded of at the moment, which is that the most successful people, if that's how you want to term it, tend to be givers rather than takers. So if I think about all the amazing people that I interviewed for Superfast, I think about the huge number of people who are involved in the Marketing Society and give so much of their time, their expertise and their help to the community and to the society. And every time you give, you get. When you mentor somebody, you learn. And there's a brilliant karma there about paying it forward. I mean, the amount of help I've had across my career from other people and what a difference that's made, the generosity of people, I want to make sure I'm continuing to do that. So I guess there's just a reminder there for us all that actually there is something so powerful about finding opportunities to help other people, and that it shouldn't feel indulgent, and making time for it is something that can be great. And then I guess the one thing I want everyone listening to always remember as well, and it's not pandemic related, but just, I don't know, I feel like the last few months I've really been struck by what an incredible profession marketing is, and how exciting it is, and remembering that for anybody who's in that field and standing up for it and finding ways to develop it. I just feel that's quite important for all of us right now as well. Can I say that?
Of course.
You certainly can. It's certainly a great plug and a great endpoint there. So Sophie, I just want to say on behalf of myself and clearly Mark, just what an amazing session this has been this morning. It's been really inspirational. So many takeaways, and I'm going to try and summarize just a few key ones and then hand over to Mark for some of his summary. The whole notion of energy is where we kicked off, and I think you've just got a lovely aura about you, I just have to say, and you really do just kind of spar that energy onto others. So I think that's such a natural fit with what you're trying to do with the Marketing Society. So I love that thought, and languishing is one element that I'm certainly taking away with going, wait a minute, maybe that's me, but hey, I'm going to use flow and focus to get through. You're talking about, I love when you talked about the A/B testing about going abroad. It's kind of the way I actually put a little note going, A/B testing in love. Not quite sure if that's exactly what you're getting at, but kind of works some ways. You talked about the overwhelmitis and the whole make choices bit, clearly around making sure that we can't do everything. Well, you can do anything, but you can't do everything, and so we've got to make sure that we really do fill our time with things that are important to us. Lindsay, of course, double emphasized your point around personal boardrooms. Do ink what you think, because that's also very, very good way of learning. And then finally, around what I just put a little note down there was turn to stories when you're thinking about your demon, turn them into stories, because that really helps you get through the hard moments. And I'm taking great consolation that even Neil Armstrong feels that way. So that's pretty cool. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, great, Ritchie. So yeah, just a couple more things. So CEO is a responsibility, not a title. I think that's a classic. Marketers need to have peripheral vision. It's a velocity, not speed, i.e. speed with direction. Very good. Do well and do good at the same time, and be a giver. Sophie, there's something very sort of zen, calmer, positive, uplifting and energetic about you. And so I actually think that P&G did dedupe their list. And thereafter, everything was history yet to be written. It's been fantastic to have you on the show, and thank you for your time on behalf of Ritchie, myself, and everybody listening.
Thank you so much, guys. I know you've got some brilliant guests coming up in the next few weeks, but thank you for doing what you do with this show. It's terrific. And for asking me to be here today. Have a great bank holiday weekend. Yeah, indeed. No, it's been fabulous. And Ritchie and I love doing this. And next week, as every week, we're back. And just a short plug, we've got Will Greenwood, the third 2003 Rugby World Cup winner. I promise that's the last. That's me sort of venting all my sort of rugby dreams. Will's a great guy, great character, a true character, had a lot of success, but also setbacks. He nearly died actually playing rugby, was knocked unconscious for 17 minutes, swallowed his tongue. He lost his first son 45 minutes after birth, and also has a daughter who has autism. So we'll hear the rough edges as well as all the great and good stuff from Will next week. So please dial in.
8 o'clock UK time. See you then. But as Sophie says, until then, have a fantastic long weekend. Thanks everybody for listening.